Hey, what is up guys, I'm Exteria, and in this video, I'm going to teach you guys the many different openers you can do in set 14. This is really important because if you know the proper openings, you can easily transition to a different comp later. And the first one I'm going to start with is the Shaco opener, where you have a Mundo with a Shaco to get that Slayer synergy activated. Another unit that you can use to help proc your synergies would be Alistar. If you're playing for level 3, this is actually really good because you get 2 Bruisers and you also get 2 Slayers. When you hit level 4, if you want to step up your synergy to be even stronger, you can go for a Syndicate route where you have Darius and a TF, so you can have Syndicate, you still keep your Bruiser, and you get 2 Slayers. The items you kind of want to itemize here would be the Bruiser melee items like Bloodthirster on Shaco, or anything of the sort like that, like Edge of Night or something. You can pivot this comp into something like a Naafiri, or a Kayn hero augment reroll, a Rengar reroll, a comp that can involve Zed, a Viego, or a Renekton carry. Something to keep in mind here is Viego's AP, but the rest of these units are AD. So if you want to build IE, it wouldn't really work too well on Viego, but maybe a different unit with Viego can use IE. So this is one of the first easiest openers you can do if you want to play for like a melee carry comp, or you could just play Shaco reroll himself. That's also fine too. The next opener we can do is Kog'Maw opener, where you have Kog'Maw with a Guinsoo's Rage Blade, and the best front lines you can probably do would be to have a Sylas and a Vi. The reason why Vanguard frontline with Kog'Maw is very good because you can probably potentially get a Skarner, so you can have Boombot in with Vanguard. So any Vanguard with Skarner is good. And then when you hit level 4, throw in a rapid fire unit like Kindred. This will be a pretty decent start since you have pretty good synergies here, which is Boombot, Rapid Fire, and Vanguard. This can pivot into a lot of different comps since Guinsoo's Rage Blade is very popular in this set, and it can potentially be very strong for any direction. Comps that can use this item would be something like a TF reroll, a Vayne reroll, a Draven reroll, a Jinx reroll, a Senna reroll, an Aphelios, a Zeri. It's okay on Samara, and it's also okay on Urgot. So these units can use Guinsoo's Rage Blade if you want to pivot into that. Or if you want to do a reroll Kog'Maw, you can do that as well. The next opener we got here is Morgana, and her itemization is really flexible because her mana pool is very small of 40. So blue buff is actually really good on her. Or if you can't build that as a start, Spirit Shojin is also really great as well. And the openers we can do here would be to have a Vanguard opener, such as Sylas or Vi. Main reason why is because the 2 cost unit that does work really well for Morgana is Rhaast, because you get Divinity Corp and you also get Vanguards. A unit that can help you synergize Morgana a little bit better would be to have a Jhin. So you can get rid of one of the Vanguards for Jhin. So you can have Dynamo, Vanguard, and Divinity Corp. The comps you can pivot into at least a blue buff would be Veigar reroll, since he can use blue buff really well, since his mana pool is super tiny. A Yuumi reroll, her mana pool is also very tiny of 30, so this works really well on her. And Annie, her mana pool is 40, so it works really well with blue buff. And finally, a Vex, she can use blue buff as well. These are the only units that can use blue buff really well, since their mana pool is very tiny. Now the units that can use Spirit Shojin would be Jhin, because his mana pool is too high and he's a caster, so Shojin on Jhin is really good. A LeBlanc, because her mana pool is also pretty high and is actually good on her. Veigar can also use Shojin because you want him to auto attack as well. So blue buff or Shojin is both good. Potentially you could put it on Draven. Draven is not too bad with Shojin. If you can't do Guinsoo's Rage Blade, this is also fine on him. In Elise, because you want her to cast more, Shojin's good on her. Senna, since her mana pool is a bit too big, having Shojin will help that. Yuumi can also potentially use Shojin as well. Annie also works really well with Shojin. Bran works really well with Shojin as well. Misfortune, since she's a Dynamo, having Shojin on her would be really great. Zyra is also a Shojin item holder because her mana pool is way too big, so Guinsoo's Rage Play is not that great on her. Ziggs, since his mana pool is also a bit too big, Shojin's really great on him. Samara, since she's a backline unit, Shojin's really good on her. And Aurora, mana pool way too high for blue buff, so Shojin's better. And that's about it. These units can use really well with Shojin, and as you see, there's a lot of potential units that can use it. Compared to blue buff, there's only about like 4 that can use it really well. Another thing I forgot to mention is LeBlanc could use really well on Guinsoo's Rage Blade as well. So for the Guinsoo Rage Blade opener, she's not bad to have as well. Since the way how she works is when she casts her ability, she's able to auto attack while the ability is activated. But the problem is she doesn't gain mana for that auto attack until the ability is finished, then you gain mana. So having Guinsoo's Rage Blade will ramp up the attack speed so that she can gain mana faster. Like Zoe from last set, she would just keep continuously auto attacking to gain mana back. The next opener we can do is something like a Zyra opener, and her best item would be to have a Shojin. What you can do for openers for Zyra at least would be to have either a Techie and then any frontline like Bruiser frontline, it's fine. Or if you really want Street Demon in, you could do an Echo and then drop either the Seraphine or the Alistar, you choose one. So here we have 3 Street Demon, and you just intertwine either having Techies in or to have a Bruiser in. Either one is fine. And the comps you can pivot to is any of the Shojin units that can use this item, and the timestamp will be on your screen to see those units again that use the Shojin. Another opener we can do that's really similar to Zyra is having a Seraphine opener, and Shojin is like one of her best items to hold. Same thing like the Zyra, you can use Zyra herself to activate techies and have whatever frontline you can get. For example, like Vanguard, since Silas is an Anima squad, this helps a lot with Seraphine, because maybe level 5, just throwing a random Anima squad to activate that synergy, so you can have 3 synergies active. Unless you want to take out one of the Vanguards, and that's fine as well. Or if you want to do it like this is also a really good opening as well. Since we get Bastion, Techie, and Anima, this is pretty decent as well. And same timestamp as the Zyra one, if you want to see any of these Shojin item holders to pivot into. Moving on to more of the flexible opener, which is Kindred, because she can hold either a Spear Shojin or even a Gwynsu's Rage Blade. The reason why this is important because she has a lot of traits since she can play either Rapid Fire or Marksman. And in the front line you can use would be something like Poppy and Jax for the Bastion opener. Or you can do a Bruiser opener with Alistair and Mundo. Or you can do a Vanguard opener with Silas and Vi. You can use the 2 cost counterparts as well, but the more level 2s you have, the better. The other opener you can also do is maybe playing Nitro opener because this is actually very strong as well because you summon this T-Rex. And in the unit that you can play with Kindred in the back could be either Kog'Maw because you get that rapid fire on her active, or you could get that Jhin to get that marksman activated. So Kindred is very flexible. You can choose whatever openers you want. You see here, if you want to do a really strong opener, you can do maybe something like this because you're able to have a lot of synergies on the board where we have Nitro and we have rapid fire on the board. Level 5, maybe look for a Bastion unit so we can have a lot of defense on the board. Then we have a lot of defense here with a +1 unit. For units you can pivot into, besides playing Nitro reroll, you can look at this timestamp here for comps that can use Gwynsu's Rage Blade, or this timestamp here for any units that can use Spear Shojins. The last opener that we could potentially do is a Nidalee opener, and she is a frontline unit that uses Bloodthirster really well. The thing about her is she's technically an AP unit, so if you do want to build damage items, having stuff like Death Cap or Jewel Gauntlet works really well on her. But if you want to build like straight up close range items that can work on her, could be like Titans and a Hajj, because these items work really well with both AP and AD. So a good opener besides having the Shyvana and the Kindred in for the Nitro that have the T-Rex in, you can do other openers such as a Naafiri in to get the amp in, and either a Bruiser opener so you can have extra HP on the board, or you could do the Exotech style with a Jax and a Jhin. And when you hit level 5, you can just throw in one more Bastion like Poppy. So this is a pretty decent opener as well if you have a strong Nidalee start. And for units that use Bloodthirster that you can pivot into would be this timestamp here. But just remember, like I said earlier, Nidalee is an AP unit. So if you have a Bloodthirster opener, this would work for that. Now we're going to go over the 2 cost item holders. And the first carry we're going to be talking about here is Graves. Graves could potentially use any like 80 range items such as like Deathblade or IE, but just for the sake of convenience, we're going to say he's a Bloodthirster item holder. Even though Hajj is the better item, we'll just say Bloodthirster to make it easier. And the units to play with him is pretty simple. It's Alistair, since you get Golden Ox with him in. And since Alistair is a bruiser, having a unit like Mundo in would be great, so you can have extra tank on the board. And then from here on out, if you can high roll it for a level 4, maybe you can get an executioner like Rengar or a Varus, or if you super high roll, maybe a Vex. Or from here on out, maybe you can put in more bruisers such as Gragas and like a Darius. So you can either have 4 bruiser here or any of the executioners down here. And unless you want to make it easier on yourself, with extra 1 cost unit, you can throw in a Shaco because you get a Slayer with the Mundo. So this opener is not bad either. So you can go for either or, just mix and match, whatever you can find. And for the comps you pivot into, it kind of varies what items you have on Graves, or you can just play Graves reroll. That also works as well, since most of the time, you probably might do that. Another 2 cost opener we can play is Jhin, and Jhin is actually pretty straightforward for the opener you want to play, because in order to play Jhin, you kind of have to play a Jax, since they're both Exotech, to gain more power, and the unit that can activate the Exotech would be a Naafiri. So you have 3 Exotech, depending on the item. If you have a Zyra item, maybe you want to build Gwynsu's Rage Blade. Unless you have a tank item, and maybe you might have a Spear Shojin. Either one works. To fill up the synergy here, for level 4, you can either add in a Bastion, or you can add in a Marksman. So either one works. Level 5, you play 3 synergies. The comps you can pivot into, the problem is, you might most of the time, maybe might build an IE, because Jin's AD, so the comps you might pivot into would be either something like an MF, or a Zyra, since they both use Shojin really well, since they're like casting 80 units like Jhin. Or if you pivot into a Gwynsu's Rage Blade, it could be most likely a Zeri, since she's also an Exotech, and she's also a rapid fire unit with Kindred, so that kind of works out in the end. I know we can do a different opener here with Jhin where you have Dynamo instead. So instead of Kindred, we can do maybe a Morgana, but the issue here is that Jhin, as of right now, doesn't do enough damage to where Dynamo is effective. So personally, I feel like having the Marksman would be better. This could change over time with patches. Maybe Jhin could just one-shot later down the line. Then at that point, having Dynamo would be more important than Marksman. Another 2-cost opener we can talk about here is LeBlanc, and LeBlanc is pretty expensive honestly in the early game because she's both strategist and a Cypher. So in order to activate Cypher, you need either a Galio or a Draven, and the 1-cost route Vi is pretty easy to get, but if you don't want to play Cypher, then you can do a strategist, which is Echo, and that's pretty expensive because they're both 2 costs. Then you can fill up the rest of the board with maybe a Street Demon, so you can activate the board with extra damage. The items you want to put on LeBlanc would be either Spirit Shojin or even Gwynsu's Rage Blade. Either one is fine. And for the comps you can pivot into is either ones that can use these items, or you could just play LeBlanc reroll if the meta is strong enough for it, because currently right now, she's kind of whatever with it. The next 2-cost opener we can do here is very similar to Nidalee, which is Naafiri, and her item hold would be Bloodthirster. It's the best one for her. Same thing like Nidalee, you want to throw in an amp unit, and you can play either Bruiser to get that extra HP going, or we could just do the Exotech route with Jax and a Jhin, and then level 5 just throw in a Bastion. Pretty simple. Since she's an AD unit that uses Bloodthirster, the units you can pivot into would be the timestamp here if you want to check out the units that use Bloodthirster really well. Another 2-cost opener that we can talk about here that uses Bloodthirster as well is Rhaast. And Rhaast is actually really strong. Potentially he could be strong even without the hero augment, but with the hero augment is the way you want to play it. And the reroll style would be with Rhaast and any other vanguards you can find like Sylas or Vi, and any other Divinity Corp unit such as Morgana. So over time it's just all the vanguard units and all the Divinity Corp units. Pretty simple. If you want to pivot out of it, if you don't have the hero augment, just any unit that can use Bloodthirster is fine. Next up we got is Twisted Fate. And Twisted Fate is pretty flexible with attack speed and AP openers, so you can use either Gwynsu's Rage Blade or any AP items you can find on him. The best opener we can do here would be to have a Syndicate opener with Darius and Shaco, and the unit that can piece these units really well together would be to have a Mundo, and if you want to rapid fire it in, you can throw in a Kindred. So this opener is not too bad with TF, but if you cannot do the Syndicate opener to Bruiser and to rapid fire is good enough as well. If you want to play TF reroll, it's potentially just Ginsu's Rage Blade with Gunblade, and then +1 maybe either Ginsu's Rage Blade again, or a comp you can pivot into if you don't want to play TF reroll that works well with these items would be a Zeri, because she works really well with double Ginsu's Rage Blade and a Gunblade if you're playing the Bastion route. Other than that, any units that can use AP items or a Gwynsu's Rage Blade is fine. Another opener we can do is Vayne opener, and her best item to hold would be Gwynsu's Rage Blade. And it's pretty straightforward. It's either you can do like full anima with Sylas, Vi, and then a Seraphine. So you can have that 3 anima to Vanguard, or even Alawi's fine. Or what we can do here is a Slayer opener with Mundo, Alistair, +1 literally anything. It could be a Shaco, or it could be even a Grave, so you can get that Golden Ox. Just anything would work. Potentially here, you can either play Vayne reroll, or you can play any units that can hold Wisdom's Rage Blade, which you can see here in this timestamp. Other than that, Vayne is probably one of the most powerful openers you can have. And now to our last unit, which is going to be Veigar. And he can potentially hold either a blue buff or Spear Shojin. Either one is fine. Or you can play reroll Veigar, and reroll Veigar would be blue buff. His opener consists of having a Poppy, since it gives off Cyber Boss, which is a very good synergy for Veigar. And from here on, you can put in a Shyvana, because it gives both Bastion and Techie. And then from here, you can branch out either with more Techies or more Bastions. Or if you want to play for Nitro angle, you can with Nidalee and a Kindred. So this works out as well. Either one works, but in the end, you can play either Veigar reroll or any units that can hold Spirit Shojin or blue buff to pivot into. If you want to see those timestamps, it'll be right here. And that is it for the set 14 openers. If you want to look for a video to learn about specific comps, you can check out this video here, which is comps you need to learn before set 14 is live. That video will be in the description below. Until then, I'll see you guys in the next one. Later.